The term Dark Ages is often used to describe a period in European history following the fall of the Western Roman Empire, roughly from the 5th to the 10th centuries. It's called the Dark Ages for good reason. This era was characterized by political chaos, economic collapse, and widespread violence. For many, it truly was one of the worst times to be alive. In this video, we'll explore the various factors that contributed to the misery of this time and why life during the Dark Ages was marked by hardship, danger, and despair. Political chaos and instability. After the fall of the Roman Empire in 476 AD, Europe was left in a political vacuum. Once united under Roman rule, large regions of Europe splintered into smaller competing kingdoms. Local lords, warlords, and kings constantly fought for power, resulting in a landscape of near-constant warfare. Without a strong centralized government, law and order crumbled. Banditry and raiding became common as local rulers struggled to maintain control. This made everyday life unpredictable and dangerous. Feudalism and social inequality. Feudalism emerged during the Dark Ages as a way to maintain order in the absence of a strong central government. However, for the majority of the population, peasants or serfs, this system made life harsh and oppressive. The social hierarchy was rigid. At the top were kings, nobles, and clergy, while peasants, who made up the vast majority, lived in extreme poverty. Their daily existence was a struggle for survival, and they had little hope of improving their circumstances. They couldn't leave their land without permission and had to ask the Lord for basic rights, such as the ability to marry or sell crops. In essence, serfs lived a life of near servitude, poverty, and famine. Economic collapse was another defining feature of the Dark Ages. With the decline of Roman trade networks, many regions were cut off from the goods and resources they had previously relied on. The lack of currency meant that most transactions reverted to bartering, and as a result, economies stagnated. Famines frequently ravaged communities, leading to malnutrition, starvation, and a decline in life expectancy. A bad harvest could mean the difference between life and death for an entire village. Additionally, food was often used as a bargaining chip in times of war. Armies would destroy crops or steal livestock to weaken their enemies, further exacerbating food shortages for the common people. Disease and poor healthcare. The Dark Ages were also marked by widespread disease, exacerbated by a lack of medical knowledge and poor living conditions. The period's most infamous plague, the bubonic plague, or Black Death, wouldn't arrive until the 14th century, but diseases like smallpox, dysentery, and leprosy were rampant. People lived in close quarters with their animals, and waste often accumulated in the streets. Clean water was scarce, and bathing was infrequent, which allowed diseases to thrive. Simple infections or injuries could lead to death due to the absence of effective medical treatment. Hospitals were rare, and the medical knowledge that did exist was based more on superstition than science. Invasions and warfare. If famine, disease, and social oppression weren't enough, the people of the Dark Ages also had to contend with frequent invasions from outside forces. This period was marked by constant warfare between European factions and external invaders. The most notable invaders were the Vikings. Starting in the 8th century, Viking raids from Scandinavia terrorized coastal communities in England, France, and beyond. The Vikings were known for their brutal tactics, often killing, enslaving, and plundering with little mercy. The Magyars. In the 9th and 10th centuries, the Magyar horsemen from what is now Hungary launched raids across Europe, particularly targeting the Germanic and Frankish kingdoms. The Saracens, Muslim forces referred to as Saracens by medieval Europeans, launched raids into southern Europe, including Italy and France. Their attacks on the Mediterranean coasts further destabilized already fragile regions. With little centralized military to provide protection, many communities were left defenseless. lack of education, and knowledge. The fall of the Roman Empire also brought about the decline of intellectual life in Western Europe. The Roman system of education, which had been widespread, fell apart, and literacy rates plummeted. Without widespread education, much of the knowledge accumulated by the Romans in science, engineering, and medicine was lost or forgotten. In fact, during the early Dark Ages, there was little scientific or philosophical progress. The Catholic Church did preserve some knowledge through monastic scriptoria, where monks copied ancient texts. Intellectual curiosity or innovation outside of church doctrine was discouraged. Religious control and superstition. During the Dark Ages, the Catholic Church was not only the spiritual authority, but also the dominant political and social institution. The Church's influence was immense, dictating everything from moral conduct to education and governance. Superstition also ran rampant. Without scientific knowledge to explain natural phenomena like diseases, famines, or natural disasters, people often believed that these were signs of divine punishment. The lack of education and the Church's control over knowledge made it difficult for people to question these beliefs. Short life expectancy. All these factors combined, war, famine, disease, lack of education, and harsh living conditions, led to a very short life expectancy. During the Dark Ages, the average life expectancy was about 30 to 40 years, with many children not surviving past infancy. Psychological hardships and isolation. Finally, the psychological toll of living in the Dark Ages must have been immense. The constant fear of invasion, hunger, disease, and poverty would have created a pervasive sense of despair. In an era when most people lived within a few miles of where they were born and communication with the outside world was limited, there was little escape from the oppressive circumstances of daily life. People lived in small insular communities where change was slow and hope for a better future was often non-existent. The Dark Ages were undoubtedly one of the harshest periods to live through in human history. With political chaos, economic collapse, widespread disease, constant warfare, and a rigid social structure, life was brutal for the vast majority of people. While there were pockets of stability and moments of cultural preservation, for the average person, the Dark Ages truly were a time of hardship and struggle. The combination of these factors makes it clear why the Dark Ages are often considered one of the worst times to be alive in history. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Let us know what you think and what you'd like to see next. Your support helps the channel grow.